We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Welcome to another edition of AVRant. My name is Rob H. And tonight, this week, I'm here with...
Joe Klusnick.
Yeah, that was the plan for our previous episode 931, which, you might have just heard that yesterday at the time that you hear this 932 special episode today. This is going to be our CEDIA 2024 special episode. Joe as our only guest today. We're not answering any questions because we answered all the questions for this week yesterday with Lee. It was not the plan, but this could work out. This could work out to our benefit. Joe and I can have a more relaxed conversation and go through all the stuff that he saw over there at CEDIA. So that's the plan for this episode today. Also,
plus you get a bonus podcast, listeners.
No kidding. Be warned, if you're watching the YouTube version, this was not the intended recording setup. We had many, as you can tell from having listened to episode 931, we had many behind-the-scenes technical issues that we did not plan on. So we have many photos that Joe took at CEDIA, plus I have other images and that I might want to show as we're going through some of the news out of CEDIA. So I'm going to be fiddling with all of that in the background. It might be easier to just follow along in the Flickr album for this episode. I'm not quite sure, but I'll do my best over on the YouTube version. Bear with me if there are many glitches and if Joe's image over on the left side of the screen turns into half of a photo at some point. It's bound to happen with what I'm messing about with an OBS. Not a well-oiled machine for me to take care of things. But yeah, there we go. Normally, this is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is email them to us at our email address, question@avrant.com. You can also find us on our website, avrant.com, and you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/avrant, or over on Facebook, facebook.com/AVRant podcast. And you can get in touch with us individually when Tom is around as the normal host of this podcast. You can reach him at tom@avrant.com via email. I'm rob@avrant.com. Lee from last night, he's lee@avrant.com. And then, yeah, social media stuff, I don't know. I don't do it very much, but I'm at First Reflect if you're going to find me anywhere. Joe, where people might find you on social medias?
Try AVS Forum. You can find me under JSKMDWK.
That'll do it. Alrighty. So, yeah, I don't really have much more to go over now because we covered all of our listeners of the week on last night's episode and don't have any more to mention just one day later. And we're going to jump right into CEDIA coverage here. So, yeah, why don't we start? We're going to kind of try to do... Oh, goodness, I should have prepared this early. Let's see. I'm going to try to do kind of a slideshow with, what Joe did there. Okay, yeah, this is going to look weird for a second, folks. Okay,
well, let me just start by giving you a little bit of background on what happened last weekend.
While I mess around back here.
Yeah, so CEDIA Expo, for those of you who don't know, Consumer Electronics Designers Installers Association has an annual show, usually in September. Last couple of years, it's been in Denver, Colorado. It's a great facility for it. I didn't really plan to go this year, but a friend of mine made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Brett Yorquist over on FAQnatics said, hey, come out and I'll give you access to the after hours event that they were doing if you give me a hand with filming and doing some other stuff. So I decided to make a trip of it. I didn't need to take a lot of training or certifications because all of mine are good for the next 3 years. I'm a CEDIA certified designer for a home theater. So I really went to check out demos and to help out and see what there was to see. So it was a very different kind of experience for me than the previous years when I've been there and really training and education focused. Okay. So I had a really short trip. I flew out early Friday morning from Sacramento area, got into Denver for the beginning of the show. All day Friday, we had an after-hours session Friday night that we were there in $1 million theater till about 9:30 at night with a ton of industry experts and influencers. And then all day Saturday, got to do a lot of filming and visiting other booths. Nice. Some of the booths I saw for a second time. But yeah, just, really a great show. Very well attended this year. Way more product announcements than I expected to see. 4 major projector companies coming out with new models.
We'll be talking about those for sure.
New subwoofers, new sound rooms that were very impressive. There's just a lot of the upper end product coming down market and being very successful with that. So yeah, let's get into it, Rob.
Okay. I'm going to do my best here, and we'll just sort of do a little bit of a slideshow going on here. But whenever news items come up, I'm going to jump in and switch over to sort of a news coverage thing there. So yeah.
Awesome. So let me know when you get the first image up.
We're up there. We're ready to roll. I'll just be going along here.
Sounds good. So got to CEDIA, got my registration, and hit some of the downstairs rooms right away. First off was Epson. Okay. I had heard that Epson was coming out with some new projectors. Really wanted to get a chance to see those. So they had the Epson QB1000, LB3000, and LB7000. The 1000 and 3000 they had in a room, and they were really kind of focusing on both low light and lights off performance. Okay. They started with the QB1000, which looked good. Wasn't overly bright. Mm-hmm. They have gotten lighter and brighter. And a little bit different chassis on on the 2 upper end models. Okay. But nice image. They were paired with a pretty decent size screen, 160 inches. I think they went up to about 190 inches. So, impressive amount of light output when they went up to the bigger projector. Mm-hmm. They had a B&W surround sound system. And the thing that was nice about that is it was downstairs. So it wasn't as loud as the rest of the show floor and could appreciate it. They actually had theater seats in there. The guy joked about the fact that he had gotten them off of Amazon and he just had his fingers crossed they were going to last the whole show, which they did.
When we see some of the future photos, many of those seats are definitely not theater recliners. A couple of them are like almost like wire frame chairs, which I guess is good for passing acoustics through. But
and it's also, they're trying to get as many people through a demo as possible.
Of course.
So this one, I think it had seating for 7 or 9 people, but first time I saw it was standing room only in the back, and it was pretty packed. But they did have a riser and a platform. The masking screen from Stewart was very impressive. Mm-hmm. It was an ambient light rejecting screen, so I really think that they were focusing both in this demo as well as the very large room they had next door to it on performance in a mixed use type of a space. So not so much just a dedicated theater, but also the ability to show their big projector was on a huge screen. They were showing football on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And so I think they were really trying to go for that media room trying application. I don't know if that was really showed everything that the new projectors were capable of, but that was how they presented. But yeah, so Epson was there in force for sure.
Yeah, so we kind of covered the news about those Epson projectors in a previous AVRant episode, so we won't regurgitate all the details once again. But yeah, we got those, the Q series QB1000 that we originally thought was going to be replacing the LS12000, but not the case. LS12000 is staying in the lineup at its $5,000 price point. QB1000 coming in at, what is that one? $8,000, right? With its, how many lumens is that? Was that the 3300 lumen one? Or
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then the QLs are the major lumen
15 grand and 28 grand or something like that. I mean, they're up at Sony and JVC prices.
That's
I think
right.
That's
they
where
do
they
not
want to play.
come with their lens in the box.
LBs.
So the additional price to add the lens onto those ones. But then crazy lumen output, right? Because like that, the highest end, the close to $30,000 body only one, that's 10,000 lumens that they were putting out on that one, which is quite a bit more than the $30,000 projectors from Sony and JVC.
And it sounds like a lot of lumens, but it does not compare to what we were seeing from some of the Barcos and the Christies. There were a lot of them on the show floor also.
So, I mean, one of the sort of running themes in all of this, because we're definitely going to be covering other projectors as well, but one of the running themes that, look, for me, not just purely personally at my type of price point thing, but in terms of how I like to recommend things to people and that, I'm not happy that the entry level is now about $6,000. You know, to me, that's a lot of money. And some of the comments I saw in some of the other video coverage, because of course the reps there are talking to dealers. They're talking to CEDIA installers. That's actually their clientele at the show. They're not really talking to end consumers so much. So there was quite a bit of chatter about profit margins and like Epson reps just saying it flat out loud. They're like, yeah, we had dealers and installers asking us to have $15,000 and $30,000 offerings so that Epson has something to go up against those other price points. And like they flat out said, they're like, well, if we're going to do that with the panel technology that we use, which is, you know, still LCD and 1080p panels being wobbled 4 times per frame, that what they're going to do is just go for the higher lumen output because they're not going to be able to match the liquid crystal on silicon chips in terms of native panel contrast or native resolution, like full 4K resolution on a single chip without any wobbling. So, I mean, that all makes sense, but, you know, some of the talk of like, oh, look at what you can get for only $8,000. I was kind of like, you know, that stings a little. That stings a little.
Agreed. But we're seeing changes in the market and I'll get to this in a little bit when we talk about the Sony micro panel display. Oh my gosh, that thing was insanely bright and insanely expensive too, right? Yeah. So, you know, we are seeing this stratification of what's available. I think they said that, you know, the LS 11,000, 12,000, I think even the 5050 was going to stay in the lineup.
It sure seems like it, yeah. And it definitely seems another trend for sure is that lamps are on their way out for projectors. It is all lasers from here on out.
Yeah, JVC has moved that way almost entirely.
Yeah. And we'll definitely be getting to the new JVC projectors, but we're going to go in turn, trying not to get too far ahead of ourselves. So, going back through your photos here, once we go past the Epson projectors, the next one we've got this very blue looking room with Pro acoustic technology on the screen there. So what was this room all about?
So right next door, Theory and Pro were also exhibiting. Okay. They actually did a really nice job from a showmanship standpoint. That they would. Every speaker that played was lit up. It was very well choreographed, timed out. It was interesting to see that they were building almost all of their systems off of like 4 different drivers. So they were just using more or less of them, either in walls or on pendants that were hanging or in their outdoor speakers. Again, and this was more of a commercial type of a product that was getting into the consumer side of things, which was another trend that I noticed a lot of. Okay. A number of manufacturers that were building product that was going to be used in multiple different ways, whether it was in a home theater, whether it was outdoors, whether it was for sound reinforcement or live sound. That certainly
makes sense on the business side of things, right? It's economies of scale, right? If you can continue to use the same drivers across multiple different products, right?
Right. So then, we got to listen to their amplifiers and their speakers. Everything was being run audio over IP in this room, which was another trend we saw a lot of on the show floor. They had a very cool 21:9 flat panel display that they were using for their demos, but did a really nice job of really kind of laying out bullet points and speaking through their whole presentation.
Okay, so following that room, we've got what looks like, I mean, I see Perlisten out here in the front, but I don't think this is definitely not Perlisten's stand, so...
Yeah, so this was heading upstairs, and this is a shot of the Trinnov, Perlisten, MadVR, Officina Acustica, was the manufacturer of the room, had a Barco projector, laser, super bright, scary warning on the door not to look at it. But this was, a very, very impressive theater. This was demoing waveforming. I have some shots later on inside that. But this one was packed all day long. A couple of the manufacturers are using more of an appointment type of a thing to schedule when you could get into demos. And if you didn't have an appointment, you weren't necessarily getting in. They had both private and public hours for people on the show floor. What you see up in the front of that image is Perlisten's new on-wall sub, which was an interesting stack. It was kind of very similar to what Procella does, that they stack cone to magnets in an in-wall type of or on-wall enclosure for their subs.
Okay.
Then if the next image you should have
it looks like Kaleidescape in big letters out here in front, and they were definitely all over the CEDIA show for sure.
And this was, I'm standing in the same spot. I just turned around.
Okay.
And so these guys were right next to each other. They were very close to the CEDIA itself, their corporate booth that was on the show floor. Kaleidescape, very, very strong presence. I think they were in 47 booths. That sounds
about right.
with their product. And I think all but 2 demos I saw were running on Kaleidescape.
Right.
I talked to them, and they said that their Strato V has been a very, very popular seller for them.
I certainly believe that. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely what many people were waiting for sure.
Yeah, it's really, I think, brought, and this is what I mentioned before, the higher end down to a more affordable, attainable price. Yes, it's still $4,000. Yes, that's still a ton of money.
Yep.
But when we're talking about home theater and the best source device that you can get, it's a great starting point for their product. This was the same booth they've used for a couple of years, had a huge quantum display on one side of it and a couple of their 100-inch displays on the other 3-sided booth, all Trinnov processors, which was kind of silly because they're just running in stereo. But they had a lot of very cool video already preloaded on it. And if you look at the next image, that should be a stack of their product.
Yeah.
So, and then you can see this is just topped with awards. I think they, took home a wagon load of best of shows, best product, best source, all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
So on one side, you see the Strato C, the Terra Prime, either the 22 or the 8, the Terra Prime, larger 4-unit, 4 drives, 48, 72, or 96.
And those are the spinning hard drive versions on the left.
Correct. And then over on the right, the Strato V, which is their new Dolby video piece, has its own solid-state drive, the 8 terabyte solid state, and then the 123, their new Monster, and 31 terabyte solid state drive. So
it comes with a monster price, that 123 terabyte.
Yeah, 65 grand. But if
65 grand. Hey, I mean, when you just need 4 of them to be able to store everything that's on Kaleidescape store there.
And I talked with one of the sales reps, and he said, a lot of the Hollywood guys that have these systems, they want to be able to download all the 4K they can get, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I believe it.
If you're in that A list and you have a big theater, you just buy 4 of these and you got every movie you can think of.
All right. So what was after Kaleidescape there?
Next image takes us to...
I see Quantum listed there.
See the difference. Here's the difference. So this was the side of the Kaleidescape booth.
Okay.
So that's just the
and then just a close-up of some equipment there from... I'm not even recognizing all of that one, so I'm not sure what that stack is.
So this is moved over to L-Acoustic.
Okay.
And L-Acoustic is another company that, and this was their yacht and home cinema division.
Gotcha.
That was exhibiting. Again, this is another pro audio company. They do big concert venues, the Adele stuff in Las Vegas. They do the big Coachella concerts. But they're moving into the home market with product, as well as, calibration, amplifiers. I believe this was audio over IP on this one, but they had a very impressive sounding demo. So in this one, they were running acoustically transparent screen. They were running 4 12-inch subs underneath the screen, full, I think there were 6 overhead, 6 surrounds. So I think that is one of the images that you see there.
This is one of the ones where they definitely didn't put in theater recliners. They did not want anything occluding people's heads from every speaker, and there are many speakers in this room surrounding everybody.
Very much so. And what was funny is that this room really could have used a little bit taller risers, because they had a very large screen in here. And the challenge was that you had a lot of heads in front of you. It's... these are small booths to try and fit as much as you can into it, but very impressive from a sound standpoint. My understanding is from the acoustics, a lot of this was designed following the RP22 guides.
Okay.
And, it sounded really great. Interesting that their bass, I thought, was very concert-like.
Okay.
And they showed both a lot of movie and concert clips, and I think I've got a whole list of some of the different demos that we can read through later on. Clips that they showed. Most of the presentations, you were in these rooms anywhere between 12, 15, 18 minutes or so, and they were showing clip after clip after clip.
Right. From a Kaleidescape, because that makes it easy to do that.
Yep. And then they would give you, kind of a question and answer session right afterwards. But yeah, their stuff. I like their booth this year. I think I almost liked it better last year just because of how impressive the sound was out of very, very small speakers.
I see. Okay.
So like I said, a lot of their sound reinforcement stuff that they'll use everywhere from, theme parks or yachts or wherever it is. They had little, 4-inch coaxial drivers that they were running 1,300 watts through. That just sounded amazing as surround speakers from such a small unit. But yeah, nice room.
Okay, so moving on from there, you've got a shot from TCL. They did come to CEDIA this year, sort of announcing themselves as the number one brand for 98-inch TVs, and I have no doubt of that. If you look at their current lineup, I mean, you can just get the TCL 98-inch TVs from Best Buy. You do not have to go to a true specialty retailer to get these very large TCL TVs. Even the 115-inch is available from Best Buy, for example. So, it was interesting to have them there at CEDIA this year.
Right. It was kind of, and I talked a lot with some of the other guys on Saturday about, they made the name for themselves at that entry level, as much like we saw Vizio do years ago, and now they're moving up market, right? So they're I think you see Hisense kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But that was a big TV, and you could see that thing from far away. Right. Nice and bright, real punchy, real colorful. This was earlier in the morning, so it wasn't real crowded to see, but got that shot early one morning. So yeah, it was a nice display. I was impressed by it.
And that is in the image we're showing. They've got it labeled below. That is the 115-incher, their QM891 for 2024 there. So I mean, that's 115 inches. There are definitely projection installations that are right around that size, whether it's 100-inch or 110-inch or 120-inch, that type of thing. So that is competing on size at those areas anyway. But $20,000, right, for the 115-inch TCL QM. 891, so it's up around those high dollar projection prices too.
Right, and that's kind of what we were talking about before, is that if you're going to spend $20,000 on a projector,
right,
then you need a screen, then you need a mount, then you need to be able to install and calibrate it all. You need to run the cables. So if I can hang up a 115
or
inch screen,
$16,000 projector very quickly gets to that $20,000 price point.
Right.
But at 98 inches versus a 100-inch projection setup, you can get a top flight TCL for $4,000 at 98 inches. So that's starting to make 100 inches and smaller kind of difficult to justify for projectors, in my opinion.
Yeah, but TCL had a strong presence. They were there. All the big manufacturers were there. And that's one of the things I love about CEDIA is that you see the LGs, the Samsungs, the Sonys.
Yeah.
We're all there playing their part. We'll jump around and get to all of those. I think the next image I have is a stack of JVC projectors.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into the news here for sure. This was one of the big stories coming out of CEDIA, was getting this announcement of some new JVC projectors.
Yeah, so I really had a lot of fun at the JVC booth. They had two stacks outside that were showing the, as you already are aware of, the 900 and the 800.
Yeah,
they had the
NZ900 NZ800, and then they have their DLP in this particular stack. Their $3,500, still laser driven, but DLP at the very bottom. They're the NZ30 down there.
And then the next image shows the NZ700 and the NZ500, and then again the white version of the
NZ30
that we just talked about. Yeah. Now, once you got inside the room, you were treated to a demo that included both the NZ500 to start with, and then they moved up to the NZ900. They went from showing movie clips on the 500, which looked very, very good. I thought better than the Epson, in my opinion. It really kind of cements my opinion very strongly of JVC projectors, and we'll get to that again a little bit on another set of images. But this was all partnered with a Grimani speaker system. Okay. So I think, I mentioned last year that in the JVC booth, they had rather anemic sounding audio. So I think it was a really good move for Grimani. If you guys know, Anthony Grimani is a very well-known calibrator, system designer, theater designer that also has opened a speaker brand. And they had a entry-level $34,000 5-point 4.4 kind of a system, I guess you'd call it.
Okay.
But, not really large speakers. We're talking like, bookshelves type size up front, a larger horizontal center below the screen, 4 of their smallest subwoofers, 1 in each corner of the room, set of side surrounds, then overhead speakers. Sounded really good. It filled the room very well, but it was $34,000 with amplification and equalization. And
It's. I mean, look, I have to remind myself about what sort of clientele we're talking about at CEDIA. This is the professional custom installer market. So yeah, it's not going after the absolute mass market here. I get that, but I have to remind myself about that. But I did want to take a moment here and just sort of cover those brand new JVC projectors as a news story.
Sounds good.
Because, we're dealing with the $6,000 NZ500, which is replacing the NP5. So the NP5 was the last remaining lamp-based projector that JVC had in their lineup, now being replaced by the NZ500. Same MSRP, $6,000 between those two, but the NZ500 is laser-driven, so that's it. JVC is all laser-driven now. The NP5, it's on clearance right now. It's a great time to buy one. It's listed at $4,000 everywhere, and it's possible to get it for a little bit less than that too. If you talk to some dealers over the phone instead of just clicking add to cart these days. So if you were waiting for an MP5 to drop below $4,000, now's your time to strike. They're still doing the same thing where they have the JVC Pro series. So the NZ500 is known as the RS1200 in the JVC Pro series, but there's no performance difference between those two things. And then there's the $9,000 NZ700, which is replacing the NZ7. And again, same MSRP between those two things. But with the NZ500 and the NZ700, they're in a new, smaller chassis than the old NP5 and NZ7. They've got a new 80-millimeter lens in both of these new models. JVC does not spec those as being all glass
And
anymore.
I asked about that. There is at least one non-glass element. I think it's like a 14 or 15 element lens. One of those is not glass.
I see.
But it looked fantastic, guys. It was really...
It doesn't have to be glass, but it was just an interesting little quirk that was in that spec sheet there. They consume less power. That's nice. Happy to see that. And then, they are using 3-chip design. So there's 3 liquid crystal on silicon chips. JVC refers to that as D-iLA. And they still have the Cinema 4K, the full 4096 by 2160, sort of like 17 by 9 instead of 16 by 9 type of aspect ratio. So when you're watching 16 by 9 sourced content, there will be pillar box bars if you're not doing any sort of scaling on those. There'll be slight little black bars on the left and right sides of the screen because the chips themselves are wider than 16 by 9. But yeah, as we go down sort of on the spec sheet there, if we're comparing the outgoing NP5 and the NZ7, then I sort of feel like this is with the new NZ500, the new NZ700, it's a little bit of JVC giveth and JVC taketh away, because there's some feature differences here, and it's not all improvements. It's not all upgrades. So along with the smaller chassis and the new lens, they actually have a smaller zoom range on these new models. It's a 1.6 times zoom instead of a 2 times zoom, and there's less lens shift range as well. It's all still motorized. It's still a healthy amount of lens shift range, but that's actually a downgrade there. Technically, it's a less zoom range and less lens shift range. The NZ500 is spec'd at being 100 lumens brighter than the NP5 was, so 2000 lumens now instead of 1900. It's a laser light engine, of course, but they're keeping the same native panel contrast between the NP5 to the NZ500, 40,000 to 1 native panel contrast, but then sort of the big one that you might notice, no more 4K 120 on the NZ500. 4K 60 is where it tops out, and the NP5 could do 4K 120. So a downgrade there. Crazy thing is that actually goes for the NZ700 as well, and you might not expect that at $9,000. The NZ500 and NZ700, they both top out at 4K 60, and... oh my goodness, can you believe it? No more 3D. No 3D on the NZ500 or the NZ700. So there's quite a few features that the older models had that the new models don't. And then, yeah, the NZ700, it does get the new 3rd generation D-iLA panels, and that means its native panel contrast is double that of the NZ7, 80,000 to 1 now on that NZ700. So that's definitely a boost there. It also gets the DCI P3 color filter and a small lumen bump up to 2300. So yeah, some improvements, but some features that went away. Also, the NZ700 doesn't have 8K eShift, and the NZ7 they called it 8K eShift. It wasn't actually 8K pixels on screen because it was wobbling the 4K native resolution panel twice per frame, which doesn't give you 8K resolution. The NZ800 and NZ900, they have 8K eShift X, which does wobble the 4K panel 4 times per frame to put 8K resolution right up there on the screen. So yeah, there you go. You got $16,000 for the NZ800, $26,000 for the NZ900, and if you want everything, you want the 4K 120, the 3D, the 8K eShift X, you got to go up to those types of price points. But all of these models have the excellent frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping that we love from JVC for HDR10. They all do HDR10 Plus now as well, so you've got those features on the HDR side. And then, yeah, there was one last feature that got taken away in the NC500 and NC700. They're not doing what JVC refers to as clear motion drive on those ones, which is their motion smoothing, their frame interpolation. So that has gone away from the new ones too. I don't mind that, but some people might complain. Some people like the motion smoothing. So there you go. That's the news on the new JVC projectors.
Now, and they're not alone in that frame interpolation, dynamic tone mapping. There's another projector in that, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
We'll get to those in due time because we don't want to lose our place in your slideshow.
Absolutely. But I do think the JVCs, for me, from a color and contrast standpoint, are still just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think that they're the reason that they have them at the top of the market is definitely well earned.
But I was a little bit surprised to see some feature rollback on I mean, not necessarily the NZ500. I kind of would have accepted and maybe even expected, because it's like, okay, we're going to transition from lamp to laser, and maybe we drop down to 4K 60 for the NZ500, and I'm not expecting the full DCI P3 color because the NP5 didn't have that either. The NZ700 at $9,000, it surprised me a little bit to not have all of those features. But yeah, there's definitely going to be people upset that their projectors don't do 3D anymore. Hey, just spend $15,000. You can get it back, right?
Yep. There's a reason to upgrade. Next booth I was
next
at.
Photo that you had, next.
So
there.
You see me over at the Stewart booth. So
okay.
Stewart had not a huge booth because they were on display in a lot of other sound rooms. There were a lot of other Stewart
they're a little
screens.
bit like Kaleidescape, where everybody else has them in their room too.
I was surprised how many Seymour Screen Excellence screens there were also.
Right.
I think there must, especially in a lot of the sound rooms, they were a lot of, Stewart wasn't everywhere, but they were on display quite a few places.
Right.
I think I saw them in JVC and over in Sony and places like that.
Yeah.
But they were demoing some new ambient light rejecting screen, as well as what they're calling a streaming screen that lets you. It's just really a masking screen. It's a newer, top and bottom masking, so that you can fit the picture on whatever you're watching to a projection screen. And that's
so was
quick.
that the one that's in the? Was that the image that's actually inside the sort of theater area there? Is that? Oh, no, that looks like a different room entirely. So we'll get to that in just a moment. So yeah, on this Stewart one, they are sort of showing like high ambient light rejection, which was definitely sort of a theme, I thought. Another theme that cropped up at the show. We saw lots of ambient light rejecting screens because, I mean, they're trying to compete with these gigantic flat panels, right?
Well, and they know people are going more for the media rooms, that people don't necessarily have enough space in the home for a dedicated theater that's light controlled, so that they're trying to, come to market with what they think is going to be sellable.
Exactly. So in addition, I'm going to take over a little bit with some more news stories here that I just wanted to cover, stuff that I didn't notice in your slideshow, so I'll use this as the opportunity just to lump together the ambient light rejecting screen news. We had Screen Innovations, who was at the show, of course, as well, and they were showing their new Black Diamond Fusion. So it's their attempt to sort of take the best of, they partnered up with Carbon Black, because that was, are they Danish? Is that right? To Carbon Black?
If you say so.
Scandinavian company anyway is Carbon Black, but they partnered up with Screen Innovations to release their screens. Now those reject like almost all ambient light. They preserve black levels under harsh lighting conditions really well, but they have a gain of like 0.2, the Carbon Black screens. So you got to throw a lot of lumens at those Carbon Black screens. And Screen Innovations was trying to take some of that technology, combine it with their pre-existing Black Diamond ambient light rejecting screens for this Black Diamond Fusion. So they're claiming that it rejects up to about 95% of ambient light, which is a pretty big improvement over the original Black Diamond. But then as long as you have correct angle placement of the projector relative to your eyes, it should deliver something close to a 1.0 gain, almost like looking at a regular white screen. So no hot spotting, but not crazy dim like the Carbon Black is. So kind of interesting to see that from Screen Innovations. I'm not sure, did you get any chance to see their demos, or were they another case of just seeing them amongst other people's?
Yeah, I didn't notice. I didn't spend a lot of time specifically looking for them. I had my list that I wanted to make sure I hit and tried to really get around the floor and see those folks.
Yeah, there's a lot to see and a lot of walking if you're going to try to take it all in. So
yeah, absolutely.
Pretty insane. And just before we leave the ambient light rejecting screen section of the news here, Elite Prime Vision, that's a division of Elite Screens. We mention Elite Screens quite often on AVRant because the great price to performance ratio coming from Elite Screens, and a lot of solutions if you need motorized or ambient light rejecting or regular white, whatever you might need. Elite Screens has probably a solution for you at a pretty reasonable price. But Elite Prime Vision EVP is sort of their division that they market more towards the custom installer area. And I sort of felt like they were trying to do a do-it-all screen because they introduced this one with a name that incorporates just about every word under the sun. EVP Power Max Sonic Star ATALR. Okay,
it's a mouthful.
EVP, that's Elite Prime Vision. That's the brand, so that's fine. Or EPV, I'm mixing that up. And then Power Max, so it's tab tensioned, it's motorized. This is a roll down screen, so it's not fixed frame. 1.0 gain, again, so that's kind of interesting to see. They're claiming about 70% light rejection, but then the Sonic Star comes in because it's acoustically transparent. Sonic Star AT is that. And yeah, we don't have exact pricing on that, but they're like, yeah, claiming it's going to be more affordable than a lot of other ones. Only listing two sizes on their website right now at 110 inches or 125 inches, 16:9 aspect ratio in both cases. But yeah, that was a one to keep an eye on, because if you're just like, I want that combination of motorized roll down, not crazy high gain, not crazy low gain, ambient light rejecting, and acoustically transparent, there aren't that many options out there. So Elite Prime Vision is trying to do that for you. Yeah, so what was next?
So the next image that I think you started looking at inside is a JBL Synthesis theater.
Okay.
So this one had another line out the door, so it took a little while to get into that. But I think there's two images, a front-facing image, and I got a rear-facing image. They actually had two full systems in this room, kind of an entry-level JBL Synthesis, a little bit smaller of their products, and then their big system,
okay.
With kind of the melt your face off kind of large.
And they definitely had a like a sleekly designed room where you're really not seeing their speakers.
Yeah.
Which is, I personally feel kind of a shame at a show like this, but they're trying to show what a lot of customers
and keep in mind, this room was surrounded by a much larger booth that had every single product on plexiglass, on display, sure. The dual 15 subs, the dual 12s, all of their in-wall stuff. They had their new JBL Harman lifestyle receivers on display in another room that you could sit and take a listen to.
Okay.
They had a third room that was more of a JBL type of a product. But yeah, I mean, a lot of traffic there all day long, but I was really there to hear the synthesis system, which I think for so long in this market was the leader and the grandfather of things. And I was surprised to see that there were a lot of competition holding down the fort for that upper end.
Right.
When you're listening to the Perlisten and the Trinnov and the Storm and the Ascendo rooms, they could definitely compete with JBL.
And Grimani too,
stuff.
right? Grimani systems as well, for sure, is competing in that area.
They absolutely not at the show this year. Like I said, they went much more entry level with their JVC system partner. Because last year they were in one of the big sound rooms and had them, $500,000 theater. But yeah, the JBL Synthesis sounded good. I've always admired the engineering that goes into their product. I think that they're great. But there's, I think, a lot of competition in that part of the market also.
And following the theme, we got these low back chairs. Nobody wants anybody's ears being blocked by the seat back.
Right. Everybody squeeze in. And again, another very bright projector behind glass in this room. I really like the lighting design in this room. It was very cool. They all turned off. But yeah, you could not see any of the speakers. You were just really immersed in the screen and the presentation.
Now, you did have a photo here of some of the, I think those are the JBL products, right? Just sort of out on the pedestals, some of the pre-pros and amplifiers that they had. And those look like the Synthesis line there, which, like the JBL Synthesis pre-pro is sort of like a rebadged Trinnov, right?
Their very top one, the SDP-75, is, a Trinnov altitude piece. But they had, receivers as well as preamps there on display in the JBL Synthesis line.
Yeah, and I mean, I wanted to just take a moment to give some kudos, some praise from my perspective. These aren't in the photos that you're showing, but since we're talking about JBL right now, outside of the Synthesis line, they were also showing those new MA series of receivers that they sort of aesthetically designed alongside the Stage 2 speakers. So the colors all match. They have the latte finish and the espresso finish, I think, were the two finish options that they had that go across both the receivers and the speakers. So, I mean, they focused a lot on the aesthetics there. But what I liked and what I wanted to give JBL some kudos for was I saw a video, I'm not sure if you visited it, but where they were showing like a full setup, a room, a home theater, an immersive audio setup, but using that series of the Stage 2 and the MA series amplifier and being like this is under $10,000 for all of it. Like all these speakers and the receiver that's powering it all is all under $10,000 versus like $10,000 gets you maybe not even one amplifier or one speaker in a lot of the other rooms. So I like that somebody, and a big company at that, JBL, a gigantic company, was willing to be like, there is something at the much lower, I mean, $10,000 is still a lot of money, but like that was a full setup, like 11 speakers and 2 subs and an AV receiver powering it all. Yeah,
and I listened to another show that they were talking about Roundup at the end of CEDIA, that there weren't a lot of receivers or receiver news in CEDIA, except for that product that you're mentioning. Yeah. And they're really going after, I think, the step up from the soundbar market, right? So if you want more an improved soundstage, if you want something more impressive than a soundbar, you can do it and still have it look very, very good. Yeah. So it's something, for a younger audience, potentially, that it's going to look very nice in a well-designed room.
I was just happy to see somebody, though, like, not be like, $6,000 per component is the entry level and $15,000 per component is what you have to spend to get something that, we're going to sell in the CEDIA market. I'm like, no, good on you, JBL. I was happy for them to do that.
Yeah. As I stepped out of the JBL Harman booth, LG was just right there across the way.
They always have a big booth at CEDIA.
Yeah, and they were just really, really showing off TVs. I mean, that's what that booth was about. They were very focused. You saw all the OLEDs there, a slew of different sizes. But yeah, good to see.
Yes, for sure. All right. We can go on from there. You're at the Sony booth here, and Sony had a lot of news at this show.
So Sony had absolutely a ton to show off. This is just outside the booth. I'm in line waiting to get in. Just had a big old coffee to keep me going through the day because I was up so early that morning. But yeah, first cinema that I went into there, they were doing a very interesting comparison between their previous model 7000 and the new BRAVIA 9 projector.
Yeah, so you had the XW 7000 previously, and now they've got so they're calling the BRAVIA Projector 9, although it also has a model number of XW 8100 ES, I believe is right on there. So a little bit confusing on the model, but they're simplifying it all. They're doing that whole, their TVs are like the BRAVIA 7, BRAVIA 8, BRAVIA 9 for their televisions now. And so the projectors, they're doing the BRAVIA Projector 8 and BRAVIA Projector 9. We'll get to the images that you took of those, and then I'll jump into a news story afterward. But yeah, right now we're seeing the sort of Kaleidescape interface that they were showing at the beginning. I'm sure they did the demos there.
Yeah, so let me just talk a little bit about their theater demo first. Okay. So, those images you see, I'm going to get to in a little bit, but in the projector room, Cinema 1 that they were calling it, they were doing back and forth side-by-side comparisons between the 7000 and the BRAVIA 9, talking a lot about their showing very dark scenes and the new processing in the BRAVIA 9 and its ability to really bring very good detail into dark scenes, that they were doing dynamic tone mapping with it. The colors were much better on the 9. It almost made me feel bad for someone who had a 7000 because, man, that 9 looked a lot better. And everybody who saw it agreed that it was great.
I mean, that's what you want from an upgrade, but I get where you're coming from, because it wasn't as though the XW7000 was a cheapo projector.
And it hasn't been out that long. Really, what they emphasized heavily was that they were taking a lot of their very high-end processing out of their flat panels and bringing it into the projector side of things.
Yeah, because one of the things we'll get to in the news section of it, but it is that same XR video processor that's in their current flagship flat panels right now. Yeah,
and it really did a much better, it was a big improvement over the 7000.
Who are all the folks in this room we got an image of here?
I think that was, depending on which image you were looking at, this was really, okay, so after Cinema 1, I went around the corner, got in line again for Cinema 2.
Gotcha.
And this was the micro panel display. This was 130 5-inch, I think.
We're getting the audience reaction of it. We're not seeing the actual thing in your photo.
Not only the audience reaction, but look how bright that image is. That screen blew me away.
Like the lights are not on in this room. No. This is a fully blacked out room. All of the light is coming from the screen at the front of the room. Okay.
It was face melting bright. They showed in some demo clip from Fury Road.
Okay.
The scene where they're driving the truck and the cars into the storm.
Yeah.
And the lightning is going off. And I kid you not, when that lightning went off, it hurts. I mean, it was so bright. It really, and then at the opposite end, in between demo scenes, it went black. It went pitch black.
Sure, right.
I'm not kidding. And every other demo I saw, when things were in between scenes, you could still see, the gray outline of the screen, a little bit of image on it. This thing went dark. And it popped like crazy. They showed some images of Japan at nighttime that looked three-dimensional. All of the cityscape was so detailed and just really phenomenal looking. And it was $150,000. Okay. They were talking about their new showroom down in Florida that, for a $700 plane ride, you can come down and demo it and check it out and in partnership with some other companies. Or you could even go up to their larger 190-inch, which was $200,000. I think that, that'll keep you in love with projectors, right? Because now that $20,000 projector we were talking about a while ago seems like a bargain.
The prices have come down from where they were a couple of years ago, though.
Absolutely.
So, because they were definitely over $500,000 for like that 190-inch size not that long. Are they still calling them their crystal LEDs? Their version of micro LED? Because at one point they were calling them Cletus, and that was maybe one of Lee's favorite things. Yeah.
Sound in this room was really interesting. So I'll back up just a little bit. In the Cinema 1 room, that was the projection room, was an all Focal system. And it was big dollars. They were using a Sony receiver as a preamp, but had the Focal brand or whatever it was, amplification, all their Utopia 1000 on walls, and in ceilings. I mean, it was, I think it was a $90,000 audio system from Focal. Sounded okay, I was really focused more on the projectors in that room, but it showed that you can, with a Sony receiver, make a very competent sounding system.
Right. So let's skip ahead to the actual news story here, because you did have a couple of shots of those new BRAVIA Projector 8 and BRAVIA Projector 9. You took a close up of them too, and they won plenty of awards, as we can see.
Absolutely. They had those up on the corner of the booth. Really easy to see and check out, get close to. That was very close to the entrance of the whole thing. You can see in the background behind that shot the building where the two cinemas were in. If I back up just a little bit, that Cinema 2 had an all Wisdom audio system in it, and you can't.
Okay.
I was trying to get it to show up, but they're underneath the screen. They had their their panels with the horizontal as well as more of like a vertical element in the center to try and bring the sound up.
I think you got a shot of that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we got the the ribbon tweeters that they're using there in both horizontal and vertical orientations.
Yeah. The Wisdom stuff sounded really good in there. Was impressive. They did have another Wisdom was also on the floor in another location, which is the next set of images. You can see it there that they've got the stack of 3 of them, stack of 2, or what the center channel that was being demoed in the Sony room is there in the lower right hand side of that image.
Okay. But to back up for a second, I'm going
to talk about the Sony projectors.
Hop into the news, because we didn't actually cover them as a news story, and we most certainly want to here. When we're talking about these brand new, we mentioned the names a few times here, but the BRAVIA Projector 8 and BRAVIA Projector 9. Let me just pull up the bit of copy that I wanted to read about them. Yeah, so you, as I mentioned, they do have full-on model numbers. So it's the XW6100ES is the Projector 8, and the XW8100ES is the Projector 9. I'm not quite sure why they're doing that, but they're more or less direct replacements for the XW6000 and the XW7000. This is a case where they're sort of adding the features that some people might have considered missing from the previous lineup of 4K native resolution laser-driven Sony projectors. So what these have added is frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping. That was a feature where they were definitely lagging behind JVC before. They had various dynamic adjustments for HDR signals, but they didn't have full-on frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, which is something that they offer in their flat panel displays. So having that XR processor now in these Projector 8 and Projector 9 models, it lets them do that frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping. And then 4K 120 support, because all of those previous projectors from Sony, the 4K projectors, they topped out at 4K 60 previously, and now they do full 4K 120 with HDMI 2.1 inputs and auto low latency for gamers and that. So they've caught up as far as all of those feature things go in that there. So let's see. They're both spec'd as being brighter than their predecessors, but they're retaining essentially the same chassis. They've got that XR processor mentioned that they're using in their flat panels, but we didn't talk about prices just yet. So if you looked at the prices of the outgoing XW6000 and XW7000, add $4,000 to those price points. So the Projector 8 is coming in at $16,000. The Projector 9 is coming in at $32,000. So I mean, just in terms of the sheer price point on those, they are sort of the highest of the ones we've been talking about between Epson and JVC and Sony. But keep in mind, those Epsons don't come with a lens. The Sony does come with a lens attached, so you're not paying a few $1,000s extra to add the lens. But more or less, they've all gotten to very, very similar price points, right? They're all that $15,000 to $16,000 for the one step down, and then the flagship is all around that $30,000 price point now. I think that was about it for the Sony news.
So, like I mentioned, after Sony went over to Wisdom, checked out their displays, they weren't really trying to play audio, but they did have a lot of their different products on display. Everything from their Sage Cinema series all the way to their very small opening in-ceiling architectural stuff that I've heard before. Very impressive sounding. I did get a chance to visit their headquarters a little while back. We could talk about that another time. But
sure.
Wisdom, I think, is a strong player in that upper end part of the product mix.
And then you've got this image here with a bunch of QR codes and some wavy looking.
Those are Wisdom
products.
Amplifiers and processors.
Okay, I had no idea what was going on there.
That's a very unique industrial design on that. I just got a kick out of it. So I just got a quick shot. I think they were smartly showing everything with QR codes so you could quickly scan it.
Gotcha.
You didn't need to pick up a piece of literature and carry it around with you all day long. Just kind of a neat rack. Thought that was cool to look at.
So our next image here, we're very familiar with these. This
You've
is
seen
the
these
stack
before.
of essentially every SVS subwoofer in their lineup, but they definitely made a splash at CEDIA this year. They had some special news to share with everybody at the show there.
17-inch subwoofers.
There we go. Yep.
So yeah, your beloved Ultra 16 has been replaced by the new Ultra 17.
Right.
There is a ton of technology in this subwoofer that I can't wait to see this trickle down to the rest of their line. Ability to have 6 bands of parametric EQ, double what they used to have. They're going to be rolling out about a month after the introduction a microphone for auto calibration of the subs, which is super cool. And I think it just speaks to the fact that processing has gotten more and more affordable in the home theater industry across the board. Dual voice coils on these. So instead of the single 8-inch that they had on the 16, these are duals.
I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that too, because this deserves its own.
I'll let you talk about it, but
I wanted to get to your other image that you had here though, because they did have their Ultra Evolution tower speakers on display as well, of course. So I'm not sure if you got to take in that demonstration.
I did spend a lot of time in SVS. Talked with Nick quite a bit. Might be doing a little bit on one of their shows in the future. Larry did the demo. This was one of the 2 that I saw that were not using Kaleidescape. Larry's a big disc believer still. Got to listen to both music and movies in this room. And it was a really kind of a simple room, right? It was kind of I think it was a 5.2.2 type of a system. Okay. So the big towers, the Ultra Evolution, Titan, Pinnacle, whatever the top of the ones are.
Pinnacle is the very top of their lineup, yep.
The Ultra Evolution Center, a set of their wedges as the height speakers, a set of their bookshelves as the rears, and 2 of the Ultra 17 porteds.
Okay, so the brand new big boys were in there. They
hammered. I mean, that room was shaking in ways it was never intended to. And these are trade show rooms, right? They're made out of cardboard and not a lot else to them. But one of the things that I picked up on right away was there's no more blue display on the subwoofers, and they did that more for volume and space because with the larger driver, and they were able to go up to a 4-inch ports on the ported version. The amplifier is actually a 4-channel amplifier that's in there. With dual channels bridged onto each voice coil. Right. So I just the ability to really control that. High SPL capability, very low subsonic reach on these. I think that's an impressive subwoofer, and I think they're going to cost like $100 more each.
That was it, yeah. So why don't we go right into it as a news story, because they definitely made a splash. And we were talking about how they have that Ultra Evolution series. Well, they were putting an R in front of that and calling this the 17 Ultra Revolution series with that extra R in front of the Evolution. $3,000 for the ported version, the PB17 Ultra. And interesting, they're not doing because you have PB1000, PB2000, PB3000, PB4000, and then it had PB16 Ultra previously, which was like a holdover from their old naming convention. But rather than calling these the 5,000 or 6,000 or something, they're like, no, PB17 Ultra. They want you to know that that's coming in there. But yeah, $3,000 means it's replacing the $2,900 PB16 Ultra. So not a huge increase in price there at all. The SB17 Ultra, the sealed version of it, that's going to be coming in at $2,500. So that's $200 more than the outgoing SB16 Ultra, which was $2,300. But yeah, Joe mentioned it there. They've greatly increased the DSP power that's built into those amplifiers. And they've removed the front panel controls that used to be on the 16 Ultra series, and that let them keep the overall cabinet size pretty much the same. They're just slightly larger, these 17 Ultras, but not very much. And then that DSP power lets them increase the number of PEQ bands from 3 to 6, just like Joe mentioned. And like Joe also mentioned, they're promising their own room correction program, a microphone that you can attach to them, use the SVS app, although that's not ready directly at launch, which is supposed to be next month. But yeah, the real difference in this new 17-inch driver design are those dual 8-inch voice coils. Now, the 8-inch voice coils were already something of an innovation, as certainly at this price point in the 16 Ultra series, you didn't usually see an 8-inch voice coil, but now there are 2 of them, dual 8-inch voice coils, and each of those voice coils is powered by its own monoblock amplifier. So it's almost like a fully dual differential system that's going on here, a push me, pull you type of system that's going on here. And all of that, aside from them wanting to be able to target subsonic bass extension numbers that they can put on their spec sheet and say like, yeah, we really are minus 3 dB at 8 hertz now, which I will argue all day that elephants have been making that noise and nobody knew about it. So we really don't hear 8 hertz. It is truly subsonic, but everybody else is doing it. So SVS has to be part of that game too. That's fine. Whatever. Lots of headroom, tons of output. But one thing they were mentioning, it basically allows them to get as much power to the driver as you possibly can from a single household 15 amp electrical circuit, because they weren't willing to be like, okay, to get full performance out of this, you got to attach it to a 20 amp circuit or a 240 volt circuit or something like that. They're like, no, people are not going to do that with SVS products. They're going to plug them into 120 volt 15 amp circuits. So this design, I don't know if there's much farther that they can push it. I don't know that you can get more actual output from it like that. And I was laughing away because there were all these people who immediately were like, why didn't they make it an 18 inch? I'm like, who cares? Like, if it were an 18-inch diameter driver but it had less output, would that have made you happy? Like, it's so silly to be worried about the diameter of the driver as opposed to the amount of displacement it can produce.
Well, and what I'm surprised by is how many people are saying, hey, I'm selling my 16s to get the 17s.
Right.
Were you not getting enough out of your 16s? I've got mine turned down like 25 dB each.
Yes, that's right.
I totally understand, like, I want the newest, latest, greatest. Awesome. But are you going to hear it? Were you that
indeed
close to the edge that you need a little bit more? I don't know. If you go, I think the last of my SVS pictures, you'll notice on the back of it, no fins on the plate amplifier, but this is the first time I've seen them drilling holes for ventilation in there. So, this thing, they weren't officially quoting numbers, but I want to say it was something like 2,800 per monoblock, so 5,600 watts or something like that, unofficially.
And if you're wondering how they can pull that off, it's like there's a big capacitor bank in there, and it's like while one of those monoblocks is pushing the driver in one direction, the other one's kind of charging back up, and then it pushes it back the other way. So that's how you end up with that dual voice coil, dual mono amplifier design, and pulling that much power out of a single 15 amp circuit. You're every time it's moving, you're charging the other side.
But spent a fair amount of time with SVS. Really like those guys. Have always been very impressed by their customer service, by their warranty program, by their performance. I really think that they're a strong company, and they got a lot of awards at the show to go along with that.
All right, so what was coming up next? We got an image of the theater, and I'm not recognizing just off first blush what's going on here, because we got a 2.35 to 1 screen, but I don't really recognize much else in this blacked out room.
So this was getting a little bit later in the afternoon. I finally had kind of made my way over to Sound Room Row. I think they had Sound Room 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all in a row on one part of the Expo Center. Mm-hmm. If I remember right, I think this was Dayton speakers that were on display.
I did not recognize that. It's got a very unique tweeter design that's going
kind
on
of in a weird spot on there.
I wouldn't have pegged that as Dayton at all.
Yeah, no. I'm going off of memory, which may not be perfect.
Okay.
But yeah, so but I liked this room, liked the color scheme in it, looked really good. All of these sound rooms were much better than in previous years at CEDIA. This is Sound Room 7, so you can go look it up on the website for be sure.
Okay.
But yeah, dark room, big overhead sound, immersive setup. Thought it was a little bit interesting. They kind of did an angled set of couches at the front, which I thought was a little bit weird. And then they did director's chairs in the back, which were nice. Okay. So that was, I think, an easier way to get you the elevation that you needed. But yeah, just took a couple of quick shots of that room.
Yeah, they're using a Christie projector in there, so they weren't going along with the theme that we've been talking about. They're old school and tried and true Christie projector.
And I think Christie had a lot of projectors in, like I said, the sound room area. They were definitely came to play at a lot of different. I think everything from like 8,500 lumens up to like 35,000 lumens. They were just a lot of different choices that you could watch there with their stuff.
All right, so what was the next up here? We're seeing something with Storm Audio in the background, but I'm not even sure what we're looking at. Oh, is that their new sort of quadratic sub that they were showing up? Was that Ascendo?
Okay, so let me catch up to you. I'm flipping through my own images.
All right.
So We talked about big voice coils a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Ascendo's got some big voice coils. So they've had this on display before. I think the largest one there goes along with like their 80-inch subwoofer, but got a chance to the what looks like a tabletop is a squared subwoofer. The 28 squared was on display. Their sound room had 12 of these in there, 3 in each corner. And
were they doing the Trinnov WaveForming with that?
No,
or?
that was a Storm room.
Okay.
So I think they were using the Dirac art in there.
Okay.
But these were some really nice subs.
Yeah.
Very, very impressive. Tremendous power handling.
Right.
These were some of their subs that they will rate all the way down from subsonic all the way up to, I think, 150 hertz. So you didn't need to use the subsonic with kick subs. You could just use these. They were only like 12 inches deep or 14
That's the
inches
thing.
deep.
Yeah, we're seeing this shallow depth from front to back with this square shape. I certainly imagine they're picturing people stacking these as well, because they seem to be very conducive to that.
And you were able to get the cone area on this 28 squared that you would get out of a 32-inch circular sub.
Right.
And yeah, they had, like I said, 3 of these stacked in a tower in each corner of the room. The front were behind the screen. The back 2 you could see. I had my hand on there for a while. Really not a lot of motion in that sub because you just have so much surface area that it's playing. But really, I think some of the nicest sounding subs that I heard there.
Cool.
These guys really do a lot as far as from an engineering to bringing out very high-end new products. But this was the room that I really kind of went to see because, and the reason I was over in the sound room was that when at 5 o'clock they shut down the expo, Brett Bjorkquist, friend of mine, got me into a room with a lot of the top influencers, all names that you've seen on YouTube, guys that really know their stuff. Matt Pose from Pose Acoustics was there. AV Nirvana was there. Haterade Cowboy, Youth Man, John Siaka, who I've been reading his articles for years and years, was in there. And the guys from Chris Seymour was there. Matt Trinkline from Storm was there, and he had been calibrating systems all over the place. I think they had 8 Storm processors in different sound rooms and demos over there, and he calibrated all of those. This was a mixed system, so that it was both audio over IP and conventional, connections for it. Again, using Kaleidescape. But the cool thing was that we played around in that room till like 9:30 that night. I mean, we had the place to ourselves. We filled up all 12 chairs in there. I sat next to DJ and the prize winner from Brett's contest, a guy named Mike Schramm, that was out there. Got to meet him and hung out with him a bunch on Sunday. Really cool guy.
Was that one of the photos that's coming up later there? Because I sort of lost our place in the in the slideshow there. We speaking of squares, going back to that sub, we had the square version of Justice League going on at some point there.
Yeah,
so was that the room you were talking about?
That is the room that we were in. There were 12 of us in there watching it. The cool thing about this was they were showing Seymour's new masking.
Yes, and we can see that in action because it definitely widens back up. This was not a 4:3 screen.
And it worked with the Kaleidescape, and I believe they were using a Lumigen with this, that you didn't need another piece to tell it to change aspect ratios.
Right.
So that it was very, very cool because the Kaleidescape would show an image, and I think we started with the Creator, which was like 2.7 to 1, very, very, very wide image. Yep. And we went all the way from 16 by 9, 2.4, and then this was a 4:3. So this is the Snyder cut. And the masking was so fast and so quiet.
Cool.
And really did a lot to enhance the experience. So
it does. Yeah, if you can't have an OLED where the black bars that are still on screen are truly black, then this is definitely the next best thing and a lot larger.
Yeah. So we got to listen to, we played, dealer's choice. We were jumping around on all kinds of stuff in here. So I like it. I think these images are from, I watched the demo before 5 o'clock that they showed to everyone. Got to watch that again. And then we got to
see the bear outside of the convention center. But you're sitting next to somebody in one of these photos. I don't recognize that fellow just by face. So I'm not sure if we should even be showing his image, but there it is.
Okay, so this is Mike Schramm, winner.
Gotcha.
Brett Bjorkquist is sitting here next to him. So
Gotcha.
he was the winner trip to CEDIA contest award winner. I spent a lot of time with him. So that's this. Yeah, if you saw the bear outside, you jump to the next morning.
Yeah.
Like I said, we were up till about 9:30. I think Brett and Chris Seymour and I were the last couple of guys to leave, and we were watching everything from high frame rate stuff. I watched some Aliens in 4K that I had watched at home just a couple of nights before at my own home theater. Wanted to see how it compared. Theirs was nicer than mine. But
and the Kaleidescape shot, is that everybody who was in that room there?
Let me see next shot.
Yeah. Or that might have been the waveforming room. It kind of looks like that room there.
The first stop that we had with Brett, Mike, and I was to get into the Trinnov room.
Okay, so that's what that one is.
So we're in the back row here, and again, they're showing Kaleidescape. Very good presentation. This room is built by Officina Acustica, and this is the same room they've been using for like the last couple of CEDIAs as well as ISE.
It's like kind of pre-constructed, but in sort of panels that they can somewhat more quickly take down and put up at trade shows.
They said they put this whole room together in 23 hours.
Right.
So, but it's like a cam lock type of a panel assembly that lets you bolt the whole room together, has everything all pre-wired in place.
And it looks like those seats have been fairly well used. You got some indentations in those seats.
And this one had, very well laid out. You had really good sight lines for the whole room. But yeah, really, they showed some cool clips. I kid you not, I think I had the Sting and Joe Sumner soundtrack from one of the concerts in my head for days and days afterwards, because I think I saw it like 6 or 7 times. We did get to experience the waveforming in here. Okay. I thought that their bass was on the strong side because they were using 8 Perlisten 15s up front and 6 Perlisten 15s in the back.
Okay.
This was a big system and very impressive. I thought it was better on movies than music for me. They played Layla in there. But yeah, it was a really fun demo. I got to spend a lot of time. Dave Pettigrew and I talked for a while. John from Trinnov was out there. So their president of the company was there on hand. So it was, a really strong presence from all of the companies that were involved in that booth.
So coming up next, you've got a bunch of comparison shots.
So this was like
side
a
by
secret.
side, and I'm not completely sure what I'm looking at here, so you can explain. We got several of these.
Absolutely. So what this was, and this you had to go off the beaten track to find this. Okay. So we, as we were recording some stuff on Saturday. They went back into some rooms that I had seen before, Epson and Theory. So I went and explored, and someone had mentioned, hey, there's a JVC Sony comparison going on.
Okay. So this wasn't like old Sony versus new Sony, which was on display, but that's not what we're looking at here. And it's not even old JVC versus new JVC. This was actually JVC versus Sony.
Correct. This was... You had to get a map from JVC to tell you where to find this thing, because it was downstairs and like a block away inside the same expo. But man, it was worth getting back there to see, because what they have here are 2 identical Stewart screens.
Okay.
One with a JVC NZ900, the other with the Sony 7000 on it.
Okay, so they weren't putting it up against the brand new Projector 9, because that was probably impossible for them to get a hold of.
Yeah, I think somebody said that Sony shipped those in that morning, so I think they're just being unveiled to them too. But this was a side-by-side comparison, and it was set up by a third party and calibrated.
Okay.
What was his name? AV Pro Edge.
Gotcha, yeah.
Jason Dostal, I think, was the guy who calibrated both of these for them. But it was such a great experience to be able to see. And I think I mentioned this to you before when we talked about M-Wave, that one of my favorite exhibits that they had there was the 8 projector shootout. Because it's really hard to compare projectors side by side unless you have something like this where it's an optimal laboratory almost type of a setup. But we watched a bunch of different clips. We were watching Pacific Rim and Lady Gaga and A Star Is Born and some Star Wars stuff. I think one of the most telling ones, there's an image there of Greatest Showman with her on screen doing audio performance where she's in concert.
Okay.
And it was I just sat and looked at that for so long because they were allowing us to pause it and make side by side comparisons, and it was just a very unique. I might not have had a shot of that.
Yeah,
sorry.
we don't have that, but of course, like if you're so like seeing the photographs that Joe took through my Skype that's going into OBS that's getting compressed into YouTube, like you're not seeing what this looked like with naked eyeballs in the actual situation. Right. And I don't know if the logo gave it away, but which one is on the left versus which one is on the right?
JVC, JVC is on the left. Sony was on the right.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm noticing there is just a higher contrast range on the JVC. Like, that's what even these definitely imperfect through YouTube photos, it's like, okay, neither of them are the black bars at the top and bottom, inky black, in this case, but that's partly the exposure of the camera as well. Although neither of them is true, like, zero nit black for those black bars.
Yeah, and some of these were shots with, I had them turn the lights on in the room so I could get an image of it.
But you can pretty just plainly see that there is just a wider dynamic range going on the JVC on the left.
Right. But keep in mind, that's the 7000 without that dynamic tone mapping, right?
Right.
So what does that tell you? That, I think the new Sony BRAVIA 9 will give JVC more of a run for their money than we've seen
Definitely,
before.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah, and they're very, very similar in terms of spec lumen output at this point, too, those two top-end offerings. And the middle offerings, too, the $15,000, $16,000 offerings are very, very similar now between Sony and JVC. I mean, I guess JVC can still claim the advantage of the 8K eShift X, because the new Sonys, even though they're doing 4K 120, they're not doing 8K. So JVC can still claim that. And 3D as well, right? Because the NZ800 and NZ900, they do still have the option of doing 3D, and the Sonys don't. So JVC can still claim superiority in a couple of feature differences there.
But I think it shows a lot of guts for them to put up their product side by side and let a third party calibrate and say, take your pick.
Kind of would have been interesting to see those new Epsons too, because the contrast would have been lower, but the sheer lumen output should have been a pretty noticeable difference. I mean, if the specs are anywhere close to be believed, 10,000 lumens should be noticeable over 3,400.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can tell, but there's a black drape in between those. Right. So there wasn't any light bleed from left to right, and you kind of sat at the back of the room. But yeah, really a great experience to be able to get to see those in person.
Cool. So what was up next? We've got another listening room, it looks like, here. And again, another one where I'm not immediately noticing and recognizing which products.
I want to say this was the Alcon room. And they were showing very unique driver type in here. I don't even remember what we demoed exactly. This was a third one that maybe was not using Kaleidescape because they had some other system, but we listened to some music in here as well as some video clips.
Yeah, we got some horn loaded. We got some looks like maybe ribbon type of things going on in the front, left, and right.
Yeah, and I think that they use that same driver all the way around.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Up next,
this was the Dynaudio room, and what you have here, this was probably one of the second or third most impressive demos from a choreographed standpoint. Okay. This is that really big looking thing underneath the TV is a prototype center channel that has I think 17 drivers in it. This was able to do some very, very impressive work with phase and time alignment and things like that. That this thing, they were able to make it go from a nice sounding center to a 2-channel to a very, very large and expansive sound to this. They were able to go seat by seat and give each listener a 2-channel experience. So they already had choreographed where the seats were going to be, and as you ran through it, your seat lit up and you could see on screen it's playing just for you or it's playing just for him.
So is that at all similar to like Yamaha's digital sound projector style of technology, where they're quite literally doing beam forming?
Correct.
With
I believe
the multiple drivers.
I believe so. And this is, like I said, is a prototype piece. When this thing was turned off, it's hard to tell from that picture, but those are all little wooden slats along the front of it. When it's turned off, they all close. So it very much blends in. It was pretty large size. They said this is center channel, is a great solution for somebody in a high concept room that doesn't want to put a lot of speakers in there. This would be your this is your streamer, this is your amplification, this is your processing, these are your speakers. This is a single box solution, but they're saying it's going to come to market probably $15,000 to $20,000.
There you go. It is CEDIA. That's the ballpark price point for thing. But yeah, certainly visually, I did not recognize that as Dynaudio immediately, because Dynaudio's speakers have a fairly recognizable industrial design to them, and that does not leap out as immediately being Dynaudio, but could be a new thing for them to make them recognizable visually. Yeah, interesting.
Okay, so from there, we're getting a little bit later on Saturday afternoon. I made my way over to Barco, and then I hit a lot of other booths in between. Got over to Martin Logan, and just made my way around. Picked up my copy of Home Theaterology, which is a new hardcover coffee table book that was available and was being autographed at the show. So that was a lot of fun. But Barco again showing very large modular display. So this was this thing must have been 17 feet across. I mean, it was impressively big. But then got into their theater, and again showing their new. This was the Heimdall, I believe, projector.
Oh, okay. So this in the theater was in action. We're going to have a shot of it later to get a look at the actual beast itself, and I'll break into a little news story about that one at that point.
Really nice motorized seats in this room. Great sounding system. This was another example of a solid screen where they were showing. The other approach that I've seen of using a center above and below the screen, actually the left and the right were also. So that was kind of like the third way, I think, of people addressing that. Ascendo showed an in-ceiling left, center, and right. That was in a waveguide kind of a solution.
Okay.
What we saw from Wisdom, what we saw from these guys with it above and below. So there was just a lot of different approaches of companies realizing, hey, with these flat panels or with screens that aren't perforated, we need to figure out a way to get.
And we talked about on a previous AVRant episode, the Grimani Systems was showing their reflectance system where they have
which didn't make it to the show.
It wasn't at the show.
It was supposed to be there, and apparently there were some issues with their partner, whoever it was.
That's too bad.
But yeah, I was trying to get, wanted to get a chance to see that also. But the Barco display, and by now I am so burnt out on displays, seeing a demo one after the next, you wouldn't think it's exhausting to watch movies, but man, between the walking and the energy of just absorbing
I can
these,
understand it. Yep.
But yeah, so you can see now I'm on looking at the Heimdall projector. So this was one of their DCI projectors. Wasn't as big as the humongous $400,000 one, but threw a very nice image. And again, Barco really known for that commercial coming into the home type of a projector system. Multiple different lenses, a lot of capability on this. These are for the guys who were watching, first run movies at home being shipped the hard drives that plug right into these projectors, and these projectors are in, their own standalone cooled type rooms. So was a very impressive image and display.
Yeah, and just as a little bit of news on that Barco residential 4K DLP Heimdall projector, what's sort of definitely of note there is it's the new single 0.98 inch, so very nearly 1 inch, full 4K resolution DLP chip, because we've seen a lot of 4K DLP projectors that are using 1080p panels and wobbling them twice per frame, or the intermediary panel that's like not quite half of 4K resolution and then wobbling that twice per frame diagonally to give you the same pixel count, but not exactly the true grid that you would get in 4K. So these are a single DLP chip with full 4K resolution, and that is Cinema 4K, the 4096 by 2160 resolution. And then it's laser-driven RGB, individual 3 separate RGB lasers producing 6,000 lumens, and being a full 3 separate RGB laser light engine, they're hitting 99.5% of Rec 2020. color. So, forget about DCI P3. This is going right up to the limits of Rec 2020 just about. So, since it is native resolution 4K, not 1080p, being wobbled 4 times per frame, this can do 4K 120. They can run it at that rate. It does have HDMI 2.1, but it's $60,000, $60,000, not a cheapie at all. So you're paying quite a price. But yeah, it's kind of into finally seeing those full 4K resolution DLP panels and being run at 4K 120. So
right, but if you want a big screen and you need the horsepower to light it up,
that's right.
This is what you're going to do. Plus, their marketing is cool and scary looking.
Heimdall for sure. All right, so what came up next after that?
Last room I got into, Sony out in the lobby built a dedicated display room that was showing the BRAVIA 8 projector and all Focal speakers. They really partnered with Focal this time.
I'm glad they were showing off the 8 in addition to the 9.
Yeah, I was too.
Of course, they're going to show off the flagship, but I'm happy that they're showing off that BRAVIA Projector 8 as well.
But it was nice to be able. This room wasn't subject to the very high noise floor of the expo floor because, like I said, it was out in the lobby all by itself, standalone, and we listened to. Some Pink Floyd in here, got to check out some movies in here, and I think I got the last demo of the day in there because they were, Saturday, everyone was tired and shutting things down. So yeah, 3 p.m. But this was all being run off of a Sony receiver again. Kaleidescape as their source.
They didn't use a PlayStation 5 Pro.
Shocking. There's a Sony Blu-ray player there. But you can see the last shot I have of all of my photos is the booth by itself as they're getting ready to turn things off.
Very, very cool. So, that is the slideshow that Joe provided, but that is not the end of the CEDIA news. It wouldn't be AVRant if we didn't push ourselves to some kind of ridiculous 2-hour time limit, which is probably unnecessary for a second episode of the thing. But yeah, I did want to cover some more news stories in here, and Joe can definitely weigh in on them as we go along here as well. So we've talked about quite a few of the micro LED displays that were there, and I thought one of the interesting stories that came out of there, the company Just Video Walls.
Yes, saw their stuff.
Yeah, they made a bit of a splash trying to bring the price down. Now, look, I'm going to get to what the price is, and it's still very, very high.
Put a swimming pool in for it.
Right. This is some of the effort to start bringing that down. So these are still modular micro LED displays, and they're calling this their lunar wall, their lunar micro LED display. So they were showing it in 2 different sizes, 135 inches and 165 inches, and the price points were $50,000 for 135 inches and $70,000 for 165 inches. That is still a lot of money, but we have seen like Samsung's The Wall at a smaller size than this at over $100,000.
Right. So, and that $50,000, that's 1/3 the price of the Sony one.
That's right.
Right. I mean, it was, it's the prices that's a bargain. You could buy 3 of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd go as far as a bargain, but it is just nice to see, downward movement on that. Now, look, these are still 4K resolution, 1000 nits peak brightness. So these are not the brightest micro LED walls that are out there, but it's not like it's a slouch. It's not like it can't do HDR. 97% of DCI P3, so it's not the very widest color, but it's, again, not a slouch for your HDR signals. Then part of what's...
Plus, you can see you're watching 4 75-inch TVs at once if you want to, right? So this one, and they can go even wider if you want to on some of the more expensive units.
Yes,
but if you're a sports bar or if you're a big football or hockey or whatever, you could be watching 4 games in 75-inch screen size at the same time, and it looked fantastic. They showed some cool stuff where you could. So many people talk about their second screen experience, where you can be browsing on part of the screen, watching a movie on another part, looking at cameras on another part. So there's some really cool capabilities with these. And again, it is for that, high net worth client maybe that's building a custom home. But there were some impressive stuff.
2 series above the Lunar. But specifically for the Lunar, one of the ways that they brought the price down to all the way down to $50,000. But one of the ways they brought the price down is if you look at most of the other video wall solutions, the modules themselves are quite small. They're basically like tablet-sized displays, so there's oodles of them that they put up there. These ones are 3 larger displays with like a preset frame that they go on. 16:9 configuration in the lunar walls, specifically that series, is all you're going to get here with these 3 larger panels. So it's like the setup, it's like more pre-configured, it's a lot faster setup time, there's a lot less individual alignment that they have to do. All of that helps to bring that price down a little bit to $50,000, $70,000, but that beats $100,000, right? So yeah, that was kind of a nice thing to see. I'm glad you got to take that in too as well. Yeah, so from there, this is one I teased last night there in the episode. Outdoor Speaker Depot. It was kind of interesting to have them at the show. And so I think the thing they were showing off, sort of the headline grabber, was their new 11-channel amplifier, the HTA 11 Max, which they're rating at 300 watts, but that's into 4 ohms. So 300 watts into 4 ohms for 3 of the channels, and then the remaining 8 channels are 150 watts into 4 ohms. But yeah, what's getting everybody excited from OSD, Outdoor Speaker Depot, their 11-channel amp, is it's $1,500 that coming out before the end of the year. They said the price will probably creep up to $1,700, but when they first introduce it, they're going to introduce it at $1,500. So it appears like I'm just looking at that back panel. I'm looking at the design. They did say it's a Class H design, and that back panel looks really, really similar to Emotiva's XPA11 Gen 3. So I think it is Jade Designs acting as the OEM behind this, because they do Class H all the time. This is exactly what the back of their amplifier blades look like. But yeah, they're doing something Emotiva isn't doing, which is this blue VU meter on the front. Got to get a little bit of that Macintosh aesthetic going in there, but clearly a lower price. Like if we are talking about 11-channel amplifiers, this is definitely one of the lowest price ones that you can get. That's still going to be about 200 watts into 8 ohms for any of those channels that are driven. So yeah, did you get a chance to actually check out that?
I remember. So I did see Outdoor Speaker Depot at M-Wave earlier this year, okay. And then I did see them on the floor, but did not spend any time in their booth. Like I said, we were moving around a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, they had more than I was honestly expecting from OSD, because they were also showing off their FS15 subwoofer. So as the name implies, 15-inch driver in here. Here's the thing, $800. $800 for a 15-inch sub with an 800-watt RMS amplifier in there. Now they're claiming, and I don't have enough experience with Outdoor Speaker Depot's spec claims versus what the measured performance ends up being. But they're claiming 15 hertz extension minus 3 dB, which is not out of the question for a 15-inch sub. Triple ported, large cabinet, pretty hefty amplifier, 15-inch subwoofer. That's not out of the question. What I did find a little bit humorous in their marketing, basically on their website, is like they specifically mention that CEDIA RP22 document and the classification, and they're like, this can reach level 4, and I'm like, in what room?
Yeah,
because that's very important to know in what room. It is the thing I kind of feared with RP22.
That it's not going to get used for marketing. Yeah,
going to become marketing speak. Yeah, but nonetheless, even if it isn't 15 hertz minus 3 dB anechoically, maybe they measure that in a corner of a small room, whatever it is like, a 15-inch sub of this design for $800, like that's kind of worthy of attention no matter what, right? I thought that was interesting.
And I keep seeing them; they're being referred to as OSD. So I think they're moving away from that Outdoor Speaker Depot,
right?
Nomenclature.
Yeah, because this is not an outdoor speaker.
No,
it really is not. But right along, they have another model in this same FS series. They've got the FS12 as well. Sorry, I just skipped past a couple of shots of the amplifier on the back, and I might come back to that. But if we get to that FS12, as the name implies, 12-inch driver, still a pretty big box, dual ported on this one. The crazy thing is they're selling it like MSRP $550, which is not crazy for a 12-inch subwoofer, 600-watt amplifier. They're claiming on their specs 18 hertz extension minus 3 dB, which is not out of the question. It is entirely possible that that's going on there, but they're selling at $365 right now. It's under $400. So I'm like, ooh, these might deserve some attention, because I have been looking for a 20 hertz extension subwoofer for under $500. The SVS got away from that. Even Monolith got away from that. They're above $500 at this point now. RSL is pretty much the go-to with their Speedwoofer 10S Mark II. But I'm like, oh, here we go. This could be a competitor, because that's $365. That's an attractive price for a pretty beefy 12-inch sub there. So on the back of those, and they had 4 of the 15s at the show at CEDIA there. But if you do check out the back panel of those FS series OSD subs, no fully verified variable phase. That's the only thing I think is missing there. I don't care that you don't have a bunch of fancy parametric EQ and stuff like that, but it's just the 0-180 polarity switch on the back there. However, both of them have RCA inputs, as you would expect, but also speaker wire binding posts that you can use there. So again, like, you don't see very many 15-inch high output subwoofers that give you the option of connecting them with speaker wire if you want to. So I think Outdoor Speaker Depot has some interesting stuff going on there. Yeah. So I wasn't even aware of those, and those aren't even brand new. So had you heard anything about those, Joe?
They haven't really made a big splash in the market. I think that they're, trying to be at more of these shows and get more awareness around that product.
Yeah, so they did have not a enclosed booth. So this was a wide open on the show floor, which is why they were using 4 of those 15-inch subs all at the front, because they didn't even have an enclosed space that was going on. But you might have noticed just above those some interesting looking speakers. Those are part of their, let's see, what do they even call it? Their Black series, right? So these are the OSD Black S82 Mark II speakers. So what's interesting here, those are 8-inch woofers in there. So those speakers are not as small as they might look. Remember, it's 15 inches below them and then 8-inch woofers in there. But these triple tweeters, you got 3 tweeters in a line, and they are in a faceplate that can be rotated. So you can, position this horizontally or vertically, and you can rotate that triple tweeter faceplate so that you're not getting weird off-axis response off to the sides. So they're claiming that these ones are 92 decibel efficient, 1 watt, 1 meter, but that is a 4 ohm nominal impedance, but 300 watts power handling, 70 hertz extension, and they're saying, max output of 116 dB. So these are pretty high output. They're only 6.2, so ever so slightly more than 6 inches deep. So, and they can be wall mounted. They have a wall mount, just keyhole mounts that you could use on the back of them. So this is potentially a high output on wall solution, going for $700 each. That's the price point on these, $700 each. So yeah, I'm kind of impressed to see Outdoor Speaker Depot coming to a show like this, and I always like the ones that are doing a whole bunch of bang for the buck, right? those are the ones I like. So yeah, that's it would have been an interesting demo to see those ones going on there. Yeah, any thoughts on those, Joe?
No, I think, like I said, that show was so big that you could spend 3 more days and still maybe not get to check everything out.
So I think I'll close the show out here because we might as well cover as much news this week as we can, because like I mentioned last night, everybody decided that this was the week to drop their news, but I was like, this was at CEDIA. Let's include it in the CEDIA show. Emotiva was there. They were showing off they were showing off their new, more compact XPA amplifiers, where nothing specs-wise or performance-wise changed about those. They just changed the positioning of the power supply inside, moved it to the side, removed a couple of amplifier modules in there, and allowed it to be a shallower depth. So we talked about those in the news already in a previous story. But they were showing off their RMC1 Plus pre-pro. So by default, this is a 16-channel pre-pro, can do 9.1.6, but it actually has expansion ports on the back, so you can add, I think it's up to 8 more channels to this. That is possible on that RMC platform that they have. $5,000, they got the price point right there. Now, what makes it a plus? What makes it RMC1 Plus and $5,000 instead of the RMC one that's $4,000 right now? Well, it's HDMI 2.1. Emotiva is finally ready to release HDMI 2.1. They said, I've got a little joke to make at their expense, but I'll get to the other product that they showed, which was the XMC2 Plus at $4,000. This is the one that is fixed at 16 channels. There's no expanding the XMC, like you can optionally expand the RMC. So this will be 9.1.6 maximum, but both of these have the new HDMI 2.1 chips. Now, they said they got the prices set, they've got the names set. They said that they expect to be shipping them in November. They didn't say what year. Yeah, so that's my... We have been waiting for HDMI 2.1 from Emotiva for a good long while now. It seems like they're just about ready, but they still said there's the last couple of confirmation that the bugs have all been worked out. So yeah, they also do have a new interface that's available that you can bring up, a web interface. And one of the complaints that some people had with their Emotiva Pre-Pros is that, like, if you turn the volume knob on the front, or if you adjusted the settings in the old web app, there was a lag. There was a lag going on. And now they were showing it off. It's like, it's snappy. It's instant. It's two-way. You change the volume in the web app and it shows up on that front panel right away. So they were happy to get that all worked out of there. So that was Emotiva at CEDIA.
Want to close out? Or one thing I want to do is, can I give you my list of the 25 demos I got to see?
Sure.
So
why
this
not?
was,
we haven't hit 2 hours yet.
Right.
What
So let's
can we
keep
do?
talking. Well, especially if you want to be able to watch at home what they were exhibiting at CEDIA.
Yeah.
So real quick, Furiosa. They were showing the big fight at the gun or at the bullet farm. That was a really cool demo.
That was the standout scene of that movie.
Absolutely. Elemental, which was animation. They were showing the fire dancing on top of the different elements and changing colors, and the water character, which was
that whole
neat.
movie is a demo scene. You could have picked just about anything out of
beautiful. Top Gun Maverick, saw kind of the couple of different, the 215 scene, as well as the closing battle, which was fun to see. The closing battle, I hadn't seen that used as a demo as much, so that was cool. Spider-Man Far From Home, we got to see the scene with the Mephisto overhead, and that was
that is a good immersive audio demo for sure.
100%. I mentioned the Sony showing Japan at night. That's not something you can see unless you're watching one of their OLED displays. Okay. But A Star Is Born, a couple of the musical sections from that, Shallows, as well as another song later on in the movie. Mm-hmm. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was used a bunch of times. Again, the scene where he first meets America, where the creatures fighting her and the bus gets thrown and split in half. Saw that a couple of times. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, of course, saw this in the SBS booth, of course. So this is the scene where they're sliding down the snow-covered hill and has some...
so this is the Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
2014 or whatever it was.
Gotcha,
but huge bass drops in that.
Right.
A couple of different times. The movie Zero Dark 30. Some of the scenes with the helicopters at night. Saw that in Sony as well as a couple of other places. But just really kind of showing off some of the dark scenes. Alpha, which is a movie about wolves.
Right.
And Sony used this to great effect, showing the difference again between that 7000 and the new 9 by showing a scene of the sun in the sky. And on the 7000, it was just kind of a really bright, hard, not a lot of distinction. They switched it over to the 9 and it looked gorgeous. The sun was very clear. The gradiations, the colors were very dynamic.
Yeah, you could actually see the roundness of the sun.
Not just a big bright light. It looked like, so it was really a cool demo that they used and actually paused on it and switched back and forth. The Creator, which I mentioned, they used some of the very wide scenes for that, showing off some of the masking, as well as in the opposite case, the Snyder Cut Justice League was used. Dune 2, the big climactic scene towards the end where the sandworms are coming in. Great for some low frequency stuff. Or
you could have done the riding of the sandworm for the first time, because that has some incredible immersive audio.
I saw that at M-Wave also. That same clip, but this one was closer to the end. I think they called the scene Grandfather. Imagine Dragons. They were playing some concert clips of that, and that was in the Ascendo room where they were playing like a large drum, and it just felt real, sounded real, looked real, really impressive. The movie Back to Black. This is the Amy Winehouse story. So saw some clips of that. Again, really nice musical piece. I have not seen that movie, but it looked interesting. Gran Turismo. This was the car racing video game player turned real life. And they showed towards the end one of the more climactic scenes where he gets his FIFA 4 racing certification. The movie Fall Guy, saw that a couple of times. Both times I think I saw the scene where he gets drugged at the club.
Oh, that's what they decided. My least favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I know. It seems like there's some other fun stuff they could have used, but the colors and the audio were good in that. A lot of strong impact when he's hitting guys with bottles of champagne.
Sure, but yeah, the scene about stuntmen where you couldn't see any of the stunts for all the weird camera effects that were going on.
But blow it up big enough, and it looked really good. A very colorful use of color and lighting and everything when he was hallucinating. The movie Fast X. I have not seen this movie. It looks ridiculous.
It is.
Jason Momoa, just chewing up the scene.
Yeah, he was having some fun.
Yeah, very obviously.
Much to Vin Diesel's chagrin, because he doesn't want anybody having fun on his set. It's all serious.
That's how the movie looked. But so there was a kind of a showdown between the two of them where he flips the Mustang over and it runs into guys. Hans Zimmer's in concert Pirates of the Caribbean was one of the demos that we saw, which is a very large orchestral, showing lots of different clips of music that you've heard in movies before, but performed live. Really good Atmos piece. The movie If, got to see some scenes of that. Again, very colorful. This is the Ryan Reynolds with Imaginary Friends. The movie Ambulance, saw some scenes from that.
They like their Michael Bay.
They do. It's loud and goes boom. This was the scene where they had lots of different ambulances being decoys, running all over the city. So that was fun to watch. Aquaman 1 and 2 got used. I saw Aquaman 2 where he's first fighting the giant bugs and then running from them and knocks over the statue to make a bridge, if you know the scene. And then the last one I'll mention is the movie Sing. Kind of towards the end of the movie. Yep, another animated, but this was a big concert. If you've seen the movie, it looks like they're at the Sphere in Las Vegas. And they're Bono is singing one of the famous U2 songs. But it sounded and looked great on some of those demos. So if you want to go home and get a feel for what was watched at CEDIA, that's my quick list.
Yeah, anytime people are asking for give me some demo scenes, like give ideas for demo scenes, there's your list right there. So yeah, just before I go, I had one question for you because it is a subject that you mentioned before and we didn't quite get back to it. So I'll couch it within another question. I would imagine that when it came to Sony showing off their new projectors and the comparison they did between their previous models and their brand new models, and then JVC showing off their new ones or their side by side between them and Sony, I would imagine they were relying on their own frame by frame dynamic tone mapping in those scenes, in those demos. But I imagine Mad VR and Lumagen were at this show and used in a lot of different booths. So were they actually utilizing their newly introduced, less expensive models, that Mad VR NV Core coming in at, what is that, $5,500 for that one? And then Lumagen had their 4140, right? Coming in at right around that $5,000-$6,000 mark as well. Were they actually there or were they using the top flight ones and all the ones they were using?
Yeah, I'm sure you can guess. It was the top flight stuff. Yeah. So, and you saw the pictures of the racks, right? It was their bigger product that was on display for both of those. JVC did make a very strong point of saying there is no processing except our own being used here. Sony, you saw what was in the racks. That's obviously their own product. So I think those companies, I was trying to think of Epson also real quick. I don't think I saw anything else being used in the Epson rack. So I think those three projector manufacturers were all doing their own. I think that maybe a lot more on some of the Christie's or the Barcos and other rooms that they were using some of these high dollar top end $12,000 plus processors to get the most out of it. Again, what I was really impressed by was the ability for the Lumagen piece to talk directly to the Kaleidescape and directly to the masking system from Seymour screens and just instantly make those changes scene to scene. So that's pretty cool.
It always blows my mind, of course, that the Barcos and the Christie's that cost more than the Sonys and the JVCs and the Epsons, they're the ones that they still need the outboard video processor to pull the frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping out of them. It's a kind of funny world when you get up into those price points.
Yeah, but I think we're seeing this across the market that it depends on. I think CEDIA is all about finding the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Right, whether that's from installation and integration or a technology standpoint or acoustics or whatever it is, that you're trying to find what's going to make that experience the best it can be and what products you need to overcome the challenges or compromises that are being put on you by that room.
Mm-hmm. And this is a trade show, right? So, I mean, they are here
to do some business.
Show to the dealers, to the installers, like this is what we have to offer. It isn't necessarily about a consumer bang for buck type of thing. It's like, no, this is what exists. It's to make people aware. It's to make the dealers and the installers aware of the latest and greatest. So of course you're gonna pull out all the stops. So yeah, that makes perfect sense from that side. Well, Joe, thank you so much for being here, regaling us with the story of having been to CEDIA in person. Is there anything final that we've left out that has to be mentioned before we leave for this week?
I don't think so, but I appreciate you sticking with me. Sorry for the technical challenges last night. I'm glad we had a separate 2 hours to cover all of this topic.
We needed it. Yeah, we wouldn't have made it through last night anyway, the way things went.
Absolutely.
No way. It all worked out for the best.
There's a ton of coverage on YouTube right now. There's so many.
We did not get all of it.
No.
We didn't get all of it. But I think we covered some things that weren't covered, in depth in some other areas. So you put it all together, you add us to the pile, and you're going to get a nice sense of what was going on at 2024 for CEDIA. It was a lot of news. And then, yeah, like I say, outside of CEDIA, everybody decided last week had to be their news time too. Absolutely ridiculous trying to keep track of it all. So for everybody for listening out there, normally we are question and answer. This is sort of a breakout special episode, and I'm glad we were able to do it that way. All worked out for the best. But if you would like to send in questions and have them answered here on AVRant, all you have to do is email those questions to us. Our email address is question@avrant.com. That's the place to send them. First in, first out. That's how we deal with our amazing organizational skills over here. So send your questions to question@avrant.com if you'd like them answered by Tom and Rob most of the time. Tom should be back next week. Minus a tooth. That's the idea. I haven't talked to him since Tuesday morning. I don't know how all that went, but I imagine it was just fine. So, well, I guess I don't have to say listener of the week. We already thanked everybody last night. So I will thank Joe Klusnick for being here, though, once again, because very, very nice of you to make all this time. And
thank you for the opportunity.
Last evening for you.
I appreciate it. Sorry for the technical challenges.
Not at all. So, yes, on behalf of Tom Andrew, who will be back next week, this has been AVRant. I am Rob H.
I'm Joe Klusnick.
Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.